your address when you get a second. What's the monthly rate for it nowadays? Question mark. I think it's worth it. But then again, I've been lucky enough to be using the same FSD that I only paid, I think, $4K for when I got my first Tesla, and then it transferred over to the Model X. I hope I can find it. It was a pretty surreal and magical moment. Would love for you to see it. How was the rest of your day? Question mark. I just got on the road for and definitely spent the least time packing for any trip I've ever been on, I think. LOL. I usually way overpack, but no time for that this time. says it still will only save 2 addresses, work or home. No, you gotta stay back there. Just curious to see how it compares with my Model X. mostly? Question mark. Just cruising around or fishing? Probably best to explore a little bit before you commit.
Vogel had essentially groped her as Jeffrey Epstein watched on at Trump Tower back in the 90s. Caroline Leavitt, who was then the press secretary for the Trump campaign, denied this woman's allegation 2 weeks before the presidential election. We know that there was another, back in 2016, another lawsuit that was filed by another accuser who said that she was introduced to Donald Trump by Jeffrey Epstein. The federal court ultimately threw that lawsuit out, and then she dropped that lawsuit herself. This is I think that this is a perilous investigation, one that has been of keen focus on, of course, Donald Trump here. And I think, though, that what this Wall Street Journal reporting bears out is that the Department of Justice has more that has not been publicly revealed, and at least has told. It may not be criminal in nature here, but that the relationship of these two men was clearly close, and that the president has a history of sexualizing women while speaking with them. If you go to the Access Hollywood tape, this is a moment here, though, where the president and the White House clearly find it sensitive, one that would lead him to threaten to file a lawsuit. And the Wall Street Journal went forward with its reporting. We'll wait to hear from the White House here at this hour for any immediate response beyond that, though.
Melissa? So again, I just want to emphasize, because we're being so careful, like, there's nothing in this story that links Donald Trump to a crime, but we are playing to two different audiences. So we were talking about a legal audience, a court of law. Donald Trump actually seems more worried about the court of public opinion and his base. And I think that's really where the consequences for this will lie. I mean, we've already seen the base is inflamed about this story. They feel that they have been duped and gaslit, and they want answers. This does provide some answers, even if it doesn't provide the kind of proof that would make its way to a jury and would be enough to satisfy the burden of proof in a criminal trial. But that may be the real thing that's at issue here. And I think the only legal jeopardy that really exists right now, based on this story, is going to be between Donald Trump and Rupert Murdoch and the Wall Street Journal over this story, because I am confident that there likely will be a lawsuit, or at least, moving toward a lawsuit against the Wall Street Journal, as we've seen this president do before.
In the reporting, I will just note, this is from the Wall Street Journal reporting. I think it's Puerto Rican reporting. He told the Journal he is preparing to file a lawsuit. He is the president. If it published an article, quote, "I'm going to sue the Wall Street Journal just like I sued everyone else," end quote.
But then sue them for what is I guess the appropriate question that you would ask is, because we know Donald Trump will sue for the purposes of A, getting some cash, or B, creating an embarrassment for the person being sued and the difficulties of all of that. But when you're stacking up the information and the evidence that's come through court proceedings and reporting like that, Antonia, you have to scratch your head. I mean, in the Wall Street Journal, it makes note of the fact that Pam Bondi initially blamed the FBI's New York office for withholding information and promised to release the remaining documents after redacting the victim's name, going to the relevant cases. There will be no cover-ups, no missing documents, and no stone left unturned. They tasked hundreds of FBI employees to review the materials and prepare them for release. So you have all of this motion around this that's relevant information. They have documents that are not newly found, right? These have been at least in the hands of the FBI or the DOJ. So what are we talking about here?
Well, I have one word of caution. If you are wondering if his supporters are now, with this new revelation, going to be certain that Donald Trump was part of the deep state here, become highly suspicious of him, potentially turn on him, we are just within minutes already getting an indication that that is not the direction that this is going. Already, I can quote from Megyn Kelly on X right now, "This is the dumbest attempted hit piece I've ever seen." Then Elon Musk, someone who's been at odds with much of this group lately, has said, yeah, the letter sounds bogus. People on the right now, they're consistently messaging, sort of matching their messaging in some cases already, saying this doesn't sound like him, this isn't how he writes, this doesn't sound like him. So we're already kind of seeing them all build whatever their story, their initial defense is going to be here. And it's always really telling when you see that roll out about how they're going to do the kind of mental gymnastics that in a way we've already seen them do this week. You played some of the sound at the top of this hour of the influencers trying to figure out how they explain why they so deeply care about this case, but they can still sort of attach themselves to this president and adore him, even as he angers them because he isn't giving them the thing that he promised them that he would give. And so I just caution people, if you think this is the thing that is now going to like break this whole movement apart, I'm not sure that this is the direction that this is going in. They are probably going to find, he is going to find whatever his message is. I'm sure we're going to get more messages from the president at the White House tonight. I know Vaughn is making those phone calls and texts as we speak right now. So they're figuring out what that is going to be. And I imagine, at least when it comes to, is Donald Trump connected to the criminal elements of this case here? Is he somehow a member of the deep state that we have been critiquing for a decade plus now? I don't know.
And well, that media sphere is more fractured than it has ever been before in this moment. Antonio read us two voices. I wonder what you've been tracking. And secondarily, can we play this out a different way, where Donald Trump had told the Wall Street Journal that he was going to sue them if they ran the piece, and they would have chosen not to have run it? What would that have done to the length of this story?
I don't think it would have changed the length of the story. I mean, I think there's enough there. His own behavior is going to keep stumbling into this, that it is going to, it's going to continue to exist. They didn't take the boiling pot off the oven. All they did was lower it back down to a simmer. So I actually don't think it was going to go away regardless of the story. This just changes the sort of the contours. And I'm tracking exactly similar things that people are going to, they don't trust the deep state. That's the problem with conspiracists, right? Is that they're always going to gravitate toward the easiest or the biggest, baddest villain. In this case, at the center of this, much as it is about Trump, and that's how we think about it, it really is about this larger thing. There's something nefarious right underneath the surface, this over-empowering deep state that Trump has been battling, that has been going after Donald Trump because he's been trying to stop it. And that's what they're mad at him for. They're mad at him for not doing one extra thing to help expose the deep state. That's what all these calls for transparency is. A lot of his supporters are not saying, oh, we think you're a pedophile too. They're mad at him because they don't think that he's releasing or exposing the thing that would help illustrate how damaging and destructive the deep state is. That's why they're so mad at him. That's why they feel betrayed, because that wasn't the thing that he promised them he would do. So it isn't totally surprising that the immediate reaction of the top influencers, especially, is to be skeptical. But one thing I would notice, and this is sort of what happens in this larger atomized landscape, as you talked about, is that this thing now has to plant and then percolate. Right, all the examples that we talked about, they're gonna, it does sound a little ridiculous, but then there are things that he says that are demonstrably not true. So those questions sort of percolate back up, and then eventually, just like we saw with the callers at the beginning of the show, these own personalities have to be accountable to their audiences. And so you have the core political, I totally expect them to do that, but then you have the Theo Vons and the Tim Dillons and the Joe Rogans and the conspiracists that are not going to be as reflexively willing to defend Trump here, especially because their audiences are. And so we have to have a couple of days to let it cook to really see what the overall effect on the landscape is. But they'll backtrap and be responsive to the audience, and that's just what's going to happen over time inside of my landscape.
Simone, before I hand it over to you to kick it over to Vaughn or to Lisa, I just want to say the Justice Department has not responded to the Wall Street Journal, and the FBI has declined to comment.
Well, and Lisa, that's where I want to go on this, because we have already seen that this is a Justice Department under the leadership of Pam Bondi, under the direction of the president, has purged career officials, lawyers who have been there for many presidents, some 3 different term presidents, who have institutional knowledge, who are loyal to the Constitution and the rule of law, not to any particular administration. And the fact that this document got out, I have to imagine that under this Justice Department, where FBI officials have already been polygraphing their colleagues, this is going to be a very difficult day, to say the least, for the career officials up at the Justice Department tomorrow.
I think that's absolutely true, in no small part because Maureen Comey, FBI Director Comey's daughter, who was a 10-year veteran, Simone, of the Department of Justice as a lawyer in the Southern District of New York, was fired yesterday. And one of the possible explanations for her firing was that it was intended to distract from the growing hubbub about the Epstein files. Now, Vaughn and I have been texting during the show. I hate to give our viewers that behind-the-scene look, but the reason we were doing that is I asked him, when did the Wall Street Journal confront Donald Trump with the fact that they had these documents? And the answer is Tuesday night. that tells you a lot, because not only did Donald Trump change his public statements about what the significance of the Epstein files were, but obviously Maureen Comey was then fired yesterday, not Tuesday, yesterday, when they already knew that this was percolating. That's when they said that the Epstein files were a creation of a bunch of Democrats and Comey, and then fired Maureen Comey without any reason, only invoking Article 2 of the Constitution. I want to say one other thing, though, is that, you know, with respect to the lawsuit here, we've seen how they've ended with other media institutions past. It may be a different scenario with the Wall Street Journal, in part because of little breadcrumbs left in the reporting. The Wall Street Journal says they've seen these documents, they know who bound the book, and they say that the book binder listed Jeffrey Epstein as a client dating back to 2003 when this book was produced. And more importantly, they say that they know that these files were reviewed by the investigators who were looking into Epstein and Maxwell some years back. It's not clear whether they mean the original sort of 2005-2006 investigation that led to Epstein's original sweetheart deal in Florida, or whether they mean the investigation that led to Epstein's indictment in 2019 in the Southern District. But either way, they seem to have satisfied themselves and all sorts of editorial higher-ups that the Department of Justice did in fact have these documents. And so, were I the Trump administration, I'd be careful about calling this a lie. Obviously, the denials are very careful in some of their wording about that. And then the final question, Simone, that I would ask is, while we're all fixated on whether or not Donald Trump wrote this imagined conversation with Jeffrey Epstein and drew his signature in a place that denotes female private parts, I want to ask the American people, how much more evidence of this man's depravity sexually do you need? He was found liable by a New York jury for sexually abusing E. Jean Carroll, who was at most an acquaintance to him, and one who in a picture he mistook for his then wife, despite saying that she was never his type. This is a woman who also won two defamation verdicts against him, one of which has withstood an appeal and the second of which seems likely to. So it's like, are you really surprised that they exchanged letters of this nature if in fact this letter is authentic? This is a person who has told you time and time again on the Access Hollywood tape, through his tape deposition, through evidence that came forward at the trial, what his sexual proclivities were and how they came to fruition. I don't know why we're all so fixated on this particular piece of evidence, given all we already know about a man
10
found
minutes,
liable
buddy.
for sexual abuse under New York law.
We're almost there. Go lay down.
Lisa, thank you for your fulsome coverage and reporting on this. Before we go, Vaughn, I want to give you the last word on any additional reporting you may have gleaned out and some of the threads that Lisa pulled on here from E. Jean Carroll, which seems like it was eons ago, but it was just last year.
Right, and I think that this is one where the White House doesn't have an immediate response. I don't know if it's clear what they can respond with. The president went with hoax, which is sort of the end-line argument that this president has used in the past when you have a difficult time explaining something away. And in this case, even today, Caroline Leavitt was asked what part of a hoax was this, if these are in fact documents, and he has a very clear history with Jeffrey Epstein. And Caroline Leavitt said that the hoax that the president was referring to, it's unclear whether this is actually the case, but was referring to was the fact that Democrats were trying to seize on this in all the information around Jeffrey Epstein, in the fact that there were Epstein files, and the fact that the two men had a relationship for political purposes. Now, if somebody's going to make this a political purpose campaign, I think that it is the right that has made that over the last 2 years at a moment in time to push back against what we saw was in the E. Jean Carroll, the President of the United States going and even after having found to defamed her, walking out of that courtroom and continuing to repeat the same story. And I think that this is a president who denies, calls things hoaxes, and in so many ways as he denies this Wall Street Journal story, there is a deep history of denials, in one in which the president does not have a history of apologizing or for acknowledging potentially a difficult past relationships. And I think that this is another moment here where the president is tasked with trying to explain away something that, frankly, I don't know, guys. It's very difficult to explain this away.
Extremely difficult, as Alicia pointed out when we came on with this breaking news. Epstein's crimes were real, his victims were real, and I have yet to hear anyone from the White House address that part. Bon Hilliard, Lisa Rubin, Angela Corazon, Melissa Murray, and Antonia Hilton, thank you all for your time and your expertise over the last hour. It has been invaluable. That does it for us on the weeknight tonight, folks. Please stay with MSNBC for the rest of the night. We will continue our coverage of this breaking story all night long. We will see you back here tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern. Don't go anywhere. All In with Chris Hayes starts right now.
Tonight on All In. I think the time has come for the administration to release all of the files. Bombshell reporting from the Wall Street Journal on Donald Trump's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein?
The body new details and a familiar, forceful denial from the president.
It's all been a big hoax. It's perpetrated by the Democrats and some stupid Republicans.
Tonight, Senator Cory Booker on the spiraling Epstein saga and former Attorney General Eric Holder on Trump and Bondi's handling of the Epstein files, Democratic hoax allegations, and the radical Republican plan to maintain power.
No, it's just a very simple redrawing. We pick up 5 seats.
But All In starts right now. Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. The Wall Street Journal just published an explosive story about Donald Trump and the late child sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein. Now, we have known that they were friends for years, and for the photo you're looking at, we've exhaustively documented on this very program their long relationship, including the footage you are seeing of the two men dancing and leering at women at Mar-a-Lago. We know that one of Epstein's late accusers, Virginia Giuffre, says she was recruited into Epstein's circle at Mar-a-Lago when she was a teenager. And of course, Donald Trump went on the record with New York Magazine in 2002 to talk about how much Epstein likes to date young women. Quote, "I've known Jeff for 15 years, terrific guy," Trump booms from a speakerphone. "He's a lot of fun to be with. It is even said he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side." But tonight, the Wall Street Journal says it has newly discovered textual evidence of the friendship between Trump and Epstein and the kinds of interests they shared in Donald Trump's own words. According to the Journal, Epstein's disgraced associate, Ghislaine Maxwell, put together a leather-bound book of letters from Epstein's associates to give the disgraced financier for his 50th birthday back in 2003. Now, to be clear, this is before he is first arrested for molesting and abusing girls in 2006. The Journal says these documents were among those examined by Justice Department officials who investigated Epstein and Maxwell years ago, according to people who've reviewed them. Now, to be clear, NBC News has not reviewed the documents in question. I'm quoting here from the Wall Street Journal's reporting. Here's the description. The letter bearing Trump's name, which was reviewed by the Journal, is body, like others in the album. It contains several lines of typewritten text framed by the outline of a naked woman, which appears to be hand-drawn with a heavy marker. A pair of small arcs denotes the woman's breasts, and the future president's signature is a squiggly Donald below her waist, mimicking pubic hair. Adding, quote, "It isn't clear how the letter with Trump's signature was prepared. Inside the outline of the naked woman was a typewritten note styled as an imaginary conversation between Trump and Epstein, written in the third person." I'll read it to you here. Voiceover. "There must be more to life than having everything," the note began. Donald. "Yes, there is, but I won't tell you what it is." Jeffrey. "Nor will I, since I also know what it is." Donald. "We have certain things in common, Jeffrey." Jeffrey. "Yes, we do." Donald. "Never age. Have you noticed that?" Jeffrey. "As a matter of fact, it was clear to me the last time I saw you." Trump. A pal is a wonderful thing. Happy birthday, and may every day be another wonderful secret. The paper also notes, quote, in an interview with the Journal on Tuesday evening, Trump denied writing the letter or drawing the picture. This is not me. This is a fake thing. It's a fake Wall Street Journal story, he said. I never wrote a picture in my life. I don't draw pictures of women, he said. It's not my language. It's not my words. He told the Journal he was preparing to file a lawsuit if it published an article. I'm going to sue the Wall Street Journal just like I sued everyone else, he said. Now, to be clear, it is not known if these letters, this letter in particular and the collection in the bound book, are part of the Trump administration's recent review of Epstein documents. The Department of Justice didn't respond to the Wall Street Journal for comment. The FBI declined to comment. Brandy Zadrozny is a senior reporter for MSNBC, where she covers conspiracy theories, the far right, and the internet. She joins me now. Holy God, Brandy, what is your reaction to this?
So my first reaction was, I have read a lot of weird things on the internet, and a lot of, I've read through Q drops and all the QAnon lore, and some of the stuff that they picked up from the WikiLeaks documents were like innocuous emails about, getting lunch, or, let's go to a pizza place, or, really, really just random things that conspiracy theorists took and just pulled apart and created a whole sort of separate world, and created like a whole nother language to fit their conspiracy theory into. Now, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, and this letter, frankly, it's weird. I don't know how else to put it. This play is just very, very strange. And so my first reaction was the conspiracy theorists are going to eat this alive. This is going to be catnip to them. And I think that might be true. I think that's true. Because again, I think the MAGA fight against pedophilia as their number one pet project that guides them all, I think will overcome even Trump's denials. But I will say, I've been reaching out to
I want more Teslas. That's a first. Nice parking job, dude. Hey, Jethro, you can get out now.